Okay, welcome to the week 8 mini lecture. This week I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to be talking about, or telling a few stories of women's movements and shifts in society and how these things relate to women's vulnerabilities and resiliencies in the community in general, but specifically regarding disaster. So the first is a personal story. My grandmother was born in 1920, which is the year that in the United States women finally achieved the right to vote. She came of age during the Great Depression, and this was ongoing, and I'm sure that this played a huge role in her life and the opportunities that she had. But certainly gender had a lot to do with it as well, when you consider the fact that she was born in an age where they had only just, women had only just earned the right to vote. So considering this would change like her opportunities, her options in terms of jobs and education. Now, my mother came of age in the 1960s, which was, the height of women's liberation in the United States, and women were demanding equal opportunities in jobs and in education, equal access to education, and also the right not to be actively sexually harassed in the job in workplaces. And then, so, this is a huge shift. And then once again, another shift is then there's me. I grew up in a time where we haven't achieved perfect equality by any stretch of the imagination, but I basically expect to be treated the same as all of my peers, regardless of gender. I expect to have the same opportunities in my life as my peers, regardless of gender. So in just 3 generations, this is a really huge change in the way that our society interacts with us due to our genders. First from, achieving the right to vote, and then now to generally living in freedom. I don't have to worry about what I can do because of, who I am, because of my gender. I'm not dependent on others to make choices for me, nor must I worry about whether I have access to similar levels of disaster resiliency due to my gender as other people in society. Now, of course, we know and we've discussed how very much goes into disaster resiliency. It's not just a matter of gender in a society, it's a matter of an awful lot of things. But I would say in, this past 90 years, an awful lot has changed, and I have a lot more freedom and ability to direct my future than certainly my grandmother did, and even my mother did. So this is a big shift in our society in not too long a period of time. The second story is from Tuvalu, where I do my research. It's a small island nation in the South Pacific, and maybe in the last 10 years, maybe 15 years, Tuvalu's women have really been uniting to try to make changes in some of the norms of the country. So there is a high rate of domestic violence. We see this in a lot of places around the world. And one of the things that Tuvalu women have been working to do is to make this a punishable, arrestable offense. As it has been in the past, if police did come out, they would just kind of like break things up, calm things down, but nobody was ever arrested because of it, no matter what sort of damage that had been inflicted within their home, because that was considered something that was within their home. We have often seen this all over the world, in our own country. This is kind of a common assumption that in our country we have shifted a lot over the past decades, and women in Tuvalu are working to also change. Now, when I was in Tuvalu last year, I saw flyers in the government building, I saw flyers in the house I was staying at, the family that I was staying at. These are flyers against domestic violence. They had pictures of men saying that real men don't do this, and kind of like setting this new standard, this norm, that this is not how things should be. And by changing all of these ideas, and also by making things more punishable, we start seeing shifts in the way women are treated in the home, in the workplace, all of these things. Now, another thing is that women are also seeking to have more decisions, more say in the decisions of the community in the Kaupule, which is the town council. Kaupule is traditionally men, and men have had the final say in this. They're generally elders. Sometimes they might be a little bit younger if they're just, really spectacular or wise, but have always been men. So groups have been gathering recently to discuss the changing needs and the changing norms of the community and the benefits to community if men and women both can offer input into the functioning of society. Now, some have said that this is too much of a change from tradition, that having women have some sort of say in these decisions is just, it's breaking too far with where Tuvaluans have come from. But there's a metaphor that came up that was related to me, and I think that it's a really good metaphor. Recently in Tuvalu culture, I mean, like just a few decades ago, the tradition was to eat dinner, eat food on banana leaves or other forms of like woven leaves. And then it was just, something that was tossed away. Well, this isn't really done so much anymore. People have plates, they have forks and knives, but people eat off of the plate, but they're still eating the same food. They still eat their same traditional food. They still gather together in community and with their cultural events and just simple gatherings too, to come together and eat the same food. So the tradition is changing, even, how we eat our food is changing, but we still are maintaining who we are at the same time. So this is always going to be kind of a difficult question whenever we have changes in women's power in a society, is that there is this question of tradition versus progress. But in addition to that, we also have this question of how much have we been missing out on because we've only been hearing part of the story before and we haven't been getting input from everyone in society. Now, this shift in women's power is played out over and over again all across the world, but sometimes in very drastically different ways. So the third story is that of the Revolutionary Association of Women in Afghanistan, or RAWA. Anne Brodsky, who is a community psychologist, has done an awful lot of studies with RAWA on sense of community and their connectedness and all sorts of the ways that they function. So basically, RAWA members are highly active in their communities. They work with education and health and also work with women's rights. So because of this last part, their members are sometimes in active danger for their lives, because in Afghanistan this is a huge shift from tradition and some people just don't take very kindly to this particular shift. Now, this is a far cry from women's liberation in the United States, where there, of course, was a great deal of uproar, and we still kind of get some of that backlash today. But nothing to the extent where, women may be killed because of, bra burning or whatever else that happened in the 60s in the United States. Or in Tuvalu, it's also very different. There's a lot of uncomfortable discussions, and there are shifts in norms, but it's not to the extent where women may be killed for taking a stand against male patriarchy. But all of this, it's all part of the same social shift that we're seeing around the world. Now, women, as we've discussed before, women are purveyors of culture. In most societies, women are the ones who teach the younger generation about the culture, the traditions, the norms, our expectations in life. In most societies, women are the ones who organize cultural events and keep things going. Women may not be the ones who lead them, may not be the priests or the cultural leaders who get up and lead the rites or the rituals. But women are the ones who are cooking the food. They gather people. They make these things happen. They keep society functioning. They keep culture going. Women are purveyors of culture. So when women have more say in the working of society, we tend to see a more just society. It's the same with all aspects of diversity, as we've talked about in previous weeks and will continue to talk about. The more equitable a power structure in a society, the more just, equitable decision-making that we have, the more equitable the society will be in general, and the more well-off people will be in general, and the more generally resilient they will be when it comes to disasters. Now, for your readings this week, you'll be navigating web pages that deal a great deal with gender and disaster issues, or gender and climate change. And these are international websites too, so we're going to get a very broad look at all of these issues and these constantly evolving issues. So, very exciting week, and I will see you all online.